Look at her pathetic face. She actually thinks she deserves to be happy, as if any man would truly love that worthless little rat if they knew what she was really like. I can't wait to see her mascara running down her cheeks when I destroy everything. Those were the words I overheard my own sister hissing into her phone as I stood frozen outside her hotel room, my wedding dress half-zipped, 3 hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables as I pressed my ear against the door. Your sister just deleted all your vendor contracts, my wedding planner whispered behind me, her face drained of color. And she told the venue you cancelled. Everything's gone. The world tilted sideways as I struggled to process this betrayal. On my phone screen was the evidence. Screenshots of messages sent from my email account to every wedding vendor, cancelling their services. But I hadn't sent them. Then my phone buzzed with a voicemail from my future mother-in-law. I don't think my son should marry someone with your history. Cassandra told us everything about the abortions, the mental breakdowns, and those 3 other men you're still seeing. We're disgusted. I collapsed onto the hallway floor, my custom gown pooling around me like spilled dreams. Through the door, I could hear my sister Cassandra's laughter as she continued. She doesn't deserve happiness. I've always been prettier and smarter. I'll make sure this wedding is a disaster. I already told the groom's parents she has an STD and 3 secret children. I sent messages from her phone to the caterer cancelling everything. I'll spike her champagne so she vomits during vows. In that moment, I knew my own flesh and blood had methodically plotted to destroy the most important day of my life. What I didn't know then was that 5 years later, she'd be scrubbing toilets in the office building I owned. The same sister who once sneered that I would never amount to anything. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock. It kicks the door down with steel-toed boots. Growing up with Cassandra meant learning to exist in perpetual eclipse. 3 years older, she was the golden firstborn, valedictorian, homecoming queen, state tennis champion. Her trophies colonized every surface of our home like gleaming plastic soldiers in an ongoing war for our father's approval. While I earned solid B's and played second violin in orchestra, Cassandra collected accolades and adoration with seemingly effortless grace. She glowed. I existed. Why can't you be more like your sister? Became the soundtrack of my childhood. Not from our mother, who quietly encouraged my artistic pursuits, but from our father, a stern corporate attorney who valued achievement above all else. After Mom died from breast cancer when I was 16, Dad's comparisons grew harsher, more frequent, as though her death had removed the only buffer between his disappointment and my inadequacy. Cassandra's gotten another scholarship offer, he'd announce at dinner, while my college rejection letters accumulated in my desk drawer. Harvard Business School is practically begging for her. What neither of them saw was how Cassandra tormented me behind closed doors. The accidental spill of bleach on my prom dress. My diary excerpts anonymously posted around school. The rumors she spread about me to ensure boys kept their distance. Jason wasn't interested in you anyway, she said after my first boyfriend mysteriously dumped me. I discovered later she'd shown him photoshopped images of me kissing another boy. He said you were boring. You should thank me for saving you the embarrassment. It's just sister stuff, Dad would dismiss on the rare occasions I complained. You're too sensitive. Then you Cassandra's preparing you for the real world. By 25, I'd built a fragile independence. My small graphic design business was growing steadily. I'd moved to Chicago, deliberately 200 miles from Cassandra's prestigious consulting firm in Indianapolis. I'd even started therapy to untangle the knots of inadequacy she'd tied inside me. Then I met Michael at a client's charity gala. Tall, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence, he listened when I spoke, really listened, something few people had ever done. As CMO of an emerging tech company, He appreciated my design perspective and hired me to rebrand his startup. Our professional relationship bloomed into romance. Michael's unwavering belief in me helped my business flourish. For the first time, someone valued me without measuring me against Cassandra. When he proposed after 18 months together, I felt worthy of happiness at last. "It's beautiful," I whispered as he slipped the vintage emerald ring onto my finger. Snowflakes drifting around us in the botanical garden where we'd had our first date. "You're beautiful," he corrected, kissing me. "Inside and out. I've never met anyone with your combination of talent and heart." His words healed places in me I hadn't realized were still wounded. Someone saw me, really saw me, and found me not just acceptable, but exceptional. Dad seemed pleased but unsurprised when I called with the news. "It's about time someone wanted to marry you," he said, managing to make my engagement sound like a lucky break rather than a celebration. "Cassandra had 3 proposals by your age, you know, but I'm glad you found someone willing to settle down with you." Still, I wanted family harmony. When Michael suggested we invite Cassandra to dinner to celebrate, I agreed, despite the unease prickling my skin. Her reaction seemed genuine. Wide smile, enthusiastic hugs, appropriate questions about wedding plans. Only I noticed how her eyes hardened when Michael mentioned my growing client list, how her fingernails dug into my arm when she embraced me. "I'm so happy for you, little sister," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Let me help plan the wedding. After all, who knows you better than me?" Against my better judgment and my therapist's subtle warnings, I agreed. Cassandra had connections, experience hosting lavish events, and maybe, just maybe, this could heal the rift between us. I couldn't have known I had just handed matches to an arsonist who'd been waiting years to burn my life to the ground. Before continuing this shocking story, I have a request. Our channel dreams of reaching 1,000 subscribers, and we can't do it without your support. Please take a second to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone who should have loved you unconditionally? How did you handle such deep family betrayal? Don't miss the shocking turning point coming up in this true story of sisterly sabotage and sweet, sweet karma. Let's get back to it. The engagement party was the first red flag. Waving so vibrantly, I'm still ashamed I ignored it. Cassandra insisted on hosting it at her elegant townhouse, arranging everything from catering to decorations. When I arrived, I discovered she'd created a slideshow of childhood photos, conspicuously featuring herself as the star, with me awkwardly positioned in the background of most shots or omitted entirely. Her toast mentioned my many failures before I finally found someone willing to settle down with me. "To Alexandra," she said, raising her champagne flute with a practiced smile, who always struggled to find her place. Thank God Michael has such a charitable heart. Michael squeezed my hand under the table, his knuckles white. "Is she Alwa?" "Eyes like this," he whispered, concern etching lines around his eyes. "She's just competitive," I replied, the habitual excuse falling from my lips before I could reconsider it. "She doesn't realize how she sounds." But she did. I saw it in the calculating gleam when she watched my reaction, the subtle triumph when I flinched at her barbs. Like a surgeon with a scalpel, she knew precisely where to cut. As wedding preparations advanced, Cassandra appointed herself my unofficial wedding planner, inserting herself into every decision. She scheduled vendor meetings when she knew I had important client presentations. She, accidentally, ordered invitations with my name misspelled. She suggested venues that were either wildly beyond our budget or unavailable on our chosen date. "I'm just trying to give you the benefit of my experience," she'd say whenever I questioned her decisions. "You've never been good at organizing things. Remember that school project you failed in 5th grade? The solar system mobile that fell apart during your presentation? The fact that she remembered such a minor childhood embarrassment was disturbing enough. That she weaponized it 20 years later was something I tried not to examine too closely. 3 months before the wedding, my largest client unexpectedly terminated our contract. The representative seemed uncomfortable when I called for an explanation. We heard some concerning things about your professional ethics, he said vaguely. We can't afford to be associated with someone who might damage our reputation. What things? I pressed, panic rising. This client represented 40% of my income. I'd rather not say specifically, he replied. But it involved falsifying design credentials and stealing another agency's work, plus some personal behavior issues that might reflect poorly on companies associated with you. My blood ran cold. The accusations were completely fabricated and suspiciously specific. 2 weeks later, my landlord called. Someone had reported illegal business activities happening in my apartment. The investigation found nothing, but the suspicion lingered, prompting a rent increase I could barely afford after losing my biggest client. My dress fitting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon. That morning, Cassandra called, hysterical, claiming Dad had fallen and needed us immediately. I rushed to his house only to find him perfectly fine, confused by my panic. When I finally reached the boutique 2 hours late, they'd given my slot away. The next available appointment was after my wedding date. Such a shame, Cassandra said, examining her manicure when I called her out on the lie. Maybe it's a sign you should reconsider this whole wedding. Michael seems too good for you, honestly. Have you noticed how he looks at other women when you're not watching? My friend Jennifer said he was quite flirtatious at that networking event last month. The comment stung, because a small wounded part of me believed it might be true. Why would someone as accomplished as Michael want me? The insecurity Cassandra had cultivated for decades bloomed anew, its toxic flowers unfurling in my chest. Then the rumors started. Michael's mother called him, concerned about my history of mental instability. A groomsman asked about my prescription drug problem. The wedding venue required an additional security deposit after hearing I had trashed a previous event space. All roads led back to Cassandra, though she maintained angelic innocence when confronted. "You're being paranoid," she'd say, eyes wide with manufactured concern. "Maybe you should see someone about these delusions. I can recommend my therapist. It runs in families, you know. Mom had issues too, before the cancer." The casual cruelty of invoking our dead mother took my breath away. "But don't you dare bring Mom into this," I said, voice shaking. "She would be ashamed of how you're acting." Something dark and ugly flashed across Cassandra's face before her mask of concern slipped back into place. "I'm worried about you, Lexi. Really worried. This wedding stress is making you irrational. Maybe we should call Dr. Harrison." Our father's oldest friend, a psychiatrist who had treated me briefly after Mom's death. 1 month before the wedding, I discovered my detailed planning spreadsheet had been deleted from my cloud storage. The backup was corrupted. Vendors began calling, confused by contradictory instructions they'd received from me. When I confronted Cassandra again, her mask slipped momentarily. "You've always had everything handed to you," she hissed, her carefully composed face contorting with rage. "Mom always favored you. Dad protected you from real consequences. Now you're marrying into money while I've worked for everything. It's not fair." The accusation was so detached from reality that I could only stare in disbelief. In her twisted narrative, she was the victim of my supposed privilege. Before I could respond, she composed herself, smiling sweetly as Michael entered the room. "Wedding jitters," she explained to my confused fiancé. "My sister's always been highly strung. Remember that incident in college, Lexi, when you had to be hospitalized?" Another lie. There had been no hospitalization, but Michael's concerned expression showed the seed of doubt had been planted. That night, I found my wedding dress in my apartment, removed from the boutique storage without my knowledge. Across the delicate lace bodice, someone had spilled red wine, leaving an ugly stain impossible to remove. As I held the ruined fabric, sobbing, I received a text from an unknown number. "Did you really think he'd marry someone like you? Your sister told us everything." I stared at the message, something breaking and reforming inside me simultaneously. This was sibling rivalry or competitive spirit. This was calculated destruction from someone who should have loved me most. The morning of my wedding dawned with chaotic phone calls. The florist hadn't received final payment. The caterer thought we'd cancelled. The photographer had been told the ceremony was postponed. My wedding planner, Emily, frantically worked to salvage what she could while I sat in stunned disbelief. "Someone methodically dismantled your entire wedding," Emily explained, showing me the trail of cancellation emails sent from my account. And they knew exactly what they were doing. My bridesmaids rallied, making emergency calls while I tried reaching Michael, who wasn't answering his phone. When my father arrived at the hotel suite, his expression told me something was terribly wrong. "Michael's parents are threatening to stop the wedding," he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "They received some disturbing information about you." "What information?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "They said," he paused, uncomfortable. "They said you've had multiple abortions, that you're still seeing other men, that you've been treated for severe psychiatric problems." He looked at me, truly looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "None of that sounds like you." Before I could process this, my phone rang. Michael's best friend, Jason. "Michael's at the bar downstairs," he said quietly. "Someone sent him intimate photos supposedly of you with another man. They're obviously photoshopped, but Cassandra's been filling his parents' heads with all kinds of stories. They're pressuring him to call it off." My body went cold as everything clicked into place. Through the adjoining door, I could hear Cassandra's voice, low and vicious. "She doesn't deserve happiness. I've been prettier and smarter my whole life. Mom always loved her. Best. I've been sleeping with her fiancé for months. He told me she's terrible in bed. I'll announce I'm pregnant with his baby during their first dance." The lie about sleeping with Michael was the final straw. I burst through the door to find Cassandra speaking into her phone, which she quickly dropped onto the bed. She wore her bridesmaid dress, a flattering sage green that I'd chosen to complement her eyes, while methodically tearing up what looked like reception seating cards. "What have you done?" I whispered, my voice shaking with rage and betrayal. "What needed to be done?" she replied calmly, as though discussing the weather. "You've been living in a fantasy. Michael doesn't love you. He pities you. Everyone does." "Is that what you tell yourself?" I asked, suddenly seeing her clearly for the first time. "That people love me out of pity, not because I deserve it, because you can't stand the thought that I might be happy." "Happy?" She laughed, the sound brittle and cold. "You don't even know what that means. You've stumbled through life without a plan, without ambition, getting lucky breaks you never earned. I've worked for everything. I sacrificed everything. And what do I get? To watch my pathetic little sister play princess for a day?" She stood, moving toward me with such venom that I instinctively stepped back. I told his parents about your abortion in college, about your nervous breakdown after Mom died, about the 3 men you're still stringing along besides Michael. By now, his entire family is convinced you're damaged goods. The abortion, a sacred secret I'd shared with only 2 people in my life, my therapist and Cassandra, during a rare, vulnerable moment. A painful choice after a sexual assault I'd never reported, that she now weaponized to destroy me. "How could you?" I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "That was the worst moment of my life. I trusted you." "Trust," she scoffed. "Such a childish concept. You never grew up, did you? Still believing in fairy tales while the rest of us live in reality." Something broke inside me then. Not my heart, but the chains of inferiority that had bound me to her approval for decades. "You know what, Cassandra?" I said, my voice steadying as a strange calm descended. "I pity you, because you'll never know what real love feels like. Not when you're so consumed with destroying mine." I turned to leave, but her words stopped me. "He'll never marry you now," she taunted. "I've made sure of it. I've been sending emails from your account for weeks. I accessed your therapy records for ammunition. I've contacted every vendor with cancellations. I've paid the photographer to accidentally delete all photos. All your little wedding dreams, gone. Maybe next time you'll think twice before stealing the spotlight from me." I looked back at my sister, this stranger wearing familiar features, and felt nothing but exhausted clarity. The only spotlight you've ever had is the one you created in your own mind. I walked out, leaving her sputtering with rage, and found Emily in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. "Get me Michael," I said. "Now." As I waited in the elevator, I heard Cassandra's phone ring from inside her purse, which she'd left on a hallway table in her haste to destroy more wedding materials. Acting on instinct, I grabbed it. The screen showed a text from her friend. "Did you send those fake emails to the groom's family yet? The ones about her sleeping with his brother?" I slipped the phone into my pocket. Evidence. Ammunition. The first counterattack in a war I never wanted, but could no longer avoid. Michael and I sat in the hotel's empty restaurant, my ruined wedding dress replaced with jeans and a sweater, his tuxedo rumpled from hours of stressed pacing. Between us lay Cassandra's phone, unlocked using our childhood dog's name, her perpetual password, a sentimentality at odds with her calculated cruelty. The evidence on her phone was damning beyond imagination. Hundreds of texts detailing her methodical destruction of our wedding. Screenshots of my email account she'd hacked months ago. Photos of my wedding dress before she'd stained it. Conversations with a man she'd paid to create false evidence of my infidelity. Detailed notes on every insecurity I'd ever revealed to her, categorized for maximum emotional damage. "I can't believe she went this far," Michael said, scrolling through messages that documented her systematic dismantling of the most important day of our lives. The fake photos, the lies to my parents, even paying the DJ to play your father's funeral song during our first dance. It's pathological. My father sat across from us, his face ashen as he read Cassandra's text to her friend. Dad always loved her best, despite her being completely worthless. His hands trembled as 28 years of carefully constructed illusions about his daughters crumbled. "I had no idea," he kept repeating. "I always thought you were the strong one, never needing my attention the way Cassandra did. I never realized she was this." A particularly vicious message appeared. "I've ruined her credit score too. Opened 3 cards in her name last month and maxed them out. She'll be financially devastated for years. Maybe then she'll understand what it feels like to struggle like I have." My stomach churned. The systematic destruction extended beyond our wedding into my financial future, my professional reputation, my relationship. This wasn't impulsive jealousy. It was calculated annihilation. The wedding guests had been informed of an unavoidable postponement. Michael's parents, after seeing the evidence, were mortified by their role in Cassandra's scheme. The vendors, understanding the extraordinary circumstances, agreed to reschedule without additional fees. The damage was done. The day we had planned for a year was in ruins, along with my relationship with my only sibling. The trust between Michael's family and me was fractured. My professional reputation had been systematically attacked. My privacy violated in the most intimate ways. We could still do it, Michael suggested gently. A small ceremony. Just us and a few friends. Not let her win. I shook my head, too emotionally exhausted to salvage the day. I don't want our wedding to be a reaction to her. When we get married, it should be on our terms, not defined by this. He nodded, understanding as always. What do you want to do about Cassandra? The question hung between us like a loaded weapon. Part of me wanted retribution, to destroy her as methodically as she'd tried to destroy me. Another part recoiled at becoming anything like her. I want her out of my life, I said finally, completely and permanently. That night, after Michael fell asleep in our hotel room, I sat by the window watching the city lights and made 3 decisions. First, I would cut Cassandra out of my life completely. No reconciliation, no forgiveness, no second chances. Some betrayals leave no room for repair. Second, I would build my business into something so successful that I would never again feel the shadow of her achievements darkening my path. Third, I would marry Michael on our own terms, when the wounds of this day had healed enough to not taint the memory. The following weeks were a blur of legal and emotional aftermath. Cassandra was charged with identity theft and fraud for accessing my accounts and impersonating me to vendors. She lost her prestigious consulting position when her firm discovered she'd used company resources to forge documents about me. Dad, finally seeing the daughter he'd idealized for what she truly was, stopped funding her lavish lifestyle. The hardest part wasn't the legal battles or the financial cleanup. It was the hollow space where family should have been. Dad tried to maintain relationships with both daughters, but his attempts at reconciliation fell flat. "She's still your sister," he'd say, not understanding that some bonds, once severed, cannot be repaired with platitudes. "No, Dad," I finally told him after his 5th attempt to arrange a family dinner. "She was never my sister in any way that matters. She was my tormentor, who happened to share DNA." I threw myself into work, channeling my pain into creativity. A design I'd been toying with for months suddenly crystallized into an innovative marketing approach that caught the attention of several major companies. My client list grew. I hired staff, rented proper office space. 6 months after the wedding, Michael and I eloped to Santorini. Just us, a photographer, and vows whispered against the backdrop of the Aegean Sea. The images, when we shared them on social media, were met with an outpouring of support from friends who knew what we'd overcome. Cassandra, according to mutual acquaintances, spiraled after her professional disgrace. Her attempts to rebuild her reputation were hampered by the criminal charges. Her elegant townhouse was foreclosed. Former friends, learning of her betrayal, distanced themselves. Without Dad's financial support and unable to secure employment at her previous level, she drifted through a series of temporary jobs. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, only a hollow recognition of justice served. The sister I had loved despite everything was gone. Perhaps had never really existed except in my desperate hope for family connection. 1 year after our non-wedding, my company secured funding to expand. We purchased a building in downtown Chicago, a former textile factory converted to modern offices with exposed brick and soaring windows. My name was etched on the door, the culmination of dreams I'd been afraid to even voice when living under Cassandra's shadow. I never expected to see her again. The restraining order I'd obtained ensured she stayed physically distant. But fate, it seems, has a twisted sense of humor and a perfect memory for debts unpaid. The irony struck me immediately, almost too perfect to be real. There she was, my sister, once the golden child destined for greatness, now wearing a grey uniform with Clean Right Services embroidered on the pocket. She pushed a cleaning cart through the lobby of my building, head down, unaware of my presence by the elevator. I could have walked away. Should have, probably. But something rooted me to the spot as she looked up and our eyes met for the first time in nearly 2 years. Recognition dawned slowly on her face, followed by mortification so intense it transformed her features. The elegant Cassandra, who once mocked my cheap wedding dress while wearing designer labels, stood frozen, clutching a bottle of window cleaner like a shield. "Alexandra," she whispered, my name sounding foreign on her lips. I said nothing, merely observed the woman who had once loomed so large in my psyche, now diminished by her own actions. Her previously perfect hair was pulled back severely, her face bare of the expensive makeup she'd once considered essential. The hands that had torn up my wedding seating cards were raw from cleaning chemicals. "This isn't..." she started, then stopped, unable to spin this situation into anything other than what it was. 1,000 responses rushed to my lips, cruel jibes about her fall from grace, righteous declarations about karma, cold dismissals of her existence. The perfect opportunity for revenge served on a silver platter. Instead, I found myself asking, "How long have you been working here?" 3 weeks, she replied, eyes darting toward the exit as though calculating an escape route. "It's temporary, until I..." She stopped, pride battling with reality. "It's just temporary," I nodded, remembering her text messages. "She'll be financially devastated for years. Maybe then she'll understand what it feels like to struggle like I have." "Your shift covers my office on the 4th floor," I said finally, my voice neutral. "Is that going to be a problem?" Her eyes flickered with familiar defiance before reality reasserted itself. "No," she replied, looking away. "No problem." I could have fired her. Could have insisted Clean Right assign someone else to my building. Could have savored the reversal of our positions, me in my tailored suit heading to my corner office, her on her knees scrubbing bathrooms. The temptation hovered, sweet and venomous. Instead, I simply nodded and stepped into the waiting elevator. That evening, Michael found me staring out the window of our apartment, troubled by the encounter. "You're not responsible for her downfall," he said gently, reading my thoughts as he often did. "She made her choices." "I know," I replied. "But seeing her like that, it didn't feel like I expected." "Revenge rarely does," he observed. "What are you going to do?" The question lingered as I considered my options. The next morning, I requested a meeting with the Clean Right supervisor, not to have Cassandra removed, as the woman clearly expected, but to establish boundaries. Cassandra could keep her job, but would not service my personal office. Professional distance would be maintained. Weeks passed. Occasionally I would glimpse her in the hallways or stairwells, our acknowledgement limited to brief nods. I instructed my staff to treat her with the same respect given to all building personnel. No special treatment, positive or negative. Then one evening, working late, I found a small package outside my office door. Inside was a silver photo frame containing a forgotten image. My mother and me on my 10th birthday, her arms wrapped around me as I grinned at the camera. A sticky note attached read simply, "Found this in Dad's things after he died. Thought you should have it." Dad's sudden heart attack 3 months earlier had gone unmarked between us. I hadn't invited Cassandra to the funeral. She hadn't attempted to attend. The photo was the first acknowledgement of our shared loss, a white flag raised tentatively. I studied the image, remembering that birthday, how Mom had made my favorite chocolate cake, how Cassandra had accidentally knocked over my presents during the party. Even then, the pattern had been established. Yet Mom had somehow loved us both, seen value in both her daughters despite their differences. The next day, I left a sealed envelope with the cleaning supervisor. Inside was a check covering 6 months of rent for a decent apartment. Not charity, but a bridge toward whatever came next between us. No note, no conditions. Just enough to help her find stable footing. 2 weeks later, I received her resignation letter from CleanRight, along with a handwritten note. "I don't deserve your help, but I'm going back to school. Teaching certification program. Mom always said I'd be a good teacher. Thank you for not being who I would have been in your position." It wasn't forgiveness. The chasm between us remained too wide, the wounds too deep. But it was recognition that the cycle of destruction had to end for either of us to move forward. My happiness was no longer contingent on her unhappiness. Her failure was not necessary for my success. 6 months later, an invitation arrived for a small gathering celebrating the launch of Michael's new tech venture. Among the acceptances was a brief message. "Thank you for including me. I'll understand if you've changed your mind." The night of the event, she arrived alone, modestly dressed, visibly nervous. When our eyes met across the room, there was no pretense of restored sisterhood, no expectation of reclaimed intimacy. Just 2 women acknowledging a shared history while standing firmly in separate presence. "Congratulations on your company's expansion," she said when we finally spoke, her voice lacking the competitive edge that had once defined our every interaction. "Dad would have been proud." "He would have been proud of your teaching program too," I replied, surprising myself with the sincerity of the statement. Something shifted then. Not forgiveness exactly, but the first molecule of oxygen in a room that had been airless for years. "Your wedding photos," she said hesitantly. "The ones from Greece. You looked beautiful, happier than I've ever seen you." "I was," I confirmed. "I am." She nodded, understanding the boundaries of our new reality. "That's good," she said simply. "That's as it should be." We would never be close. The bridesmaid I'd once imagined standing beside me existed only in childhood fantasies, but as she moved away to speak with other guests, I felt the weight of her shadow lift completely. My success was my own. My happiness required neither her approval nor her downfall. Sometimes revenge isn't about watching someone suffer, but about living so fully that their power to hurt you evaporates like morning dew under the strengthening sun. 5 years have passed since the wedding that never was. Michael and I now have a daughter, named after my mother. My company has expanded to 3 cities. Life moves forward with a momentum that leaves little time for dwelling on past injuries. Cassandra teaches 8th grade English at a public school 2 states away. We exchange birthday cards and occasional texts about Dad's estate matters. The performances of perfect sisterhood have been abandoned in favor of a distant but peaceful coexistence. Some family ties remain knotted but intact. Others are permanently severed. We found a middle path, not close, but no longer actively destructive. Sometimes at night, I still dream of that hotel room, of her voice saying, "She doesn't deserve happiness," with such conviction. In waking hours, I understand that her statement reflected not my worthiness, but her woundedness. The tragedy wasn't what she did to my wedding, but what she did to herself, poisoning her own potential with the belief that my joy somehow diminished hers. I've learned that happiness isn't deserved or undeserved. It's created, choice by choice, day by day. It exists not in perfect celebrations or Instagram-worthy moments, but in the quiet confidence that comes from surviving your worst day and building something meaningful from its ashes. My office building still uses CleanRite services, though Cassandra no longer pushes their carts through its holes. Sometimes I think about her when I see the cleaning staff, not with satisfaction at her fall or regret for our fractured relationship, but with the simple acknowledgement that all lives contain both triumph and humiliation, often separated by thinner margins than we care to admit. If you've ever wondered whether to forgive someone who tried to destroy your happiness, I can't offer a universal answer. Some bridges, once burned, should remain as instructive ruins. Others might be cautiously rebuilt, though they'll never again bear the same traffic of trust. What I know is this: the moment I stopped measuring my success against her failure, my joy against her sorrow, was the moment I truly became free. Not from her, but from the person I might have become in my quest for retribution, someone as trapped in bitterness as she had been in jealousy. In the end, the greatest revenge against those who insist you don't deserve happiness is to create it anyway, day by imperfect day, until their opinion becomes nothing more than background noise in the symphony of your deliberately chosen life. If this story of sisterly betrayal and redemption moved you, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. We're working hard to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Don't forget to like and comment below with your thoughts.